Are you halfway through your day feeling frustrated because your priorities keep getting pushed aside? It's the end of the year and your taxes aren't done. You skipped your workout. The 5-minute meditation you promised yourself yesterday never happened. Basically, life has swooped in and suddenly you're on everyone else's schedule, overcommitting to keeping others happy while your health and your goals get pushed to the back burner. Sound familiar? Today, we're diving into the number one thing that's quietly stealing your progress and how you can finally take control. So welcome to episode number 32 of Embers Rising. Today, we're getting real about the number one thing that's quietly derailing your progress. You've got goals, you've got plans, but somehow, by the end of the day, everything you wanted to do for you gets left behind. If you've ever felt like life is running you instead of the other way around, this episode is for you. Let's dive in and figure out how to stop the distractions and take back control. Hey, David, welcome to this episode.
Hey, Wendy.
What's up, man?
Hey, I haven't seen you since we got out of bed together. That's not true. You made waffles after our workout.
We did have breakfast waffles this morning. It was pretty good.
So it's Saturday.
It
We
is.
usually do not shoot this episode on Saturday.
Yeah.
We're usually running or
Training.
just doing something. But
Yeah.
today, we're like trying to get ahead.
We are.
Because yesterday we got behind.
Yes, which we're going to talk about because that ties into this episode.
Major distractions. So I'm just going to point something out here.
Yes.
In fact, I'm going to point two things out.
You got it.
You led your introduction with the word, "Are you frustrated?"
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about the emotions being one of the number one distractions. I know you have a different
Yes.
direction for
Yes.
this. But the other thing I want to do, I find this incredibly ironic, right? And what I find ironic is that our job is literally to create emotional reactions and create distractions, right? Like we're in marketing, we're in
That's funny.
everything we do.
Yeah.
And yet we're going to talk about how to break the thing that we're actually trying to do to you.
do.
I do a lot of ads, right? It's all about creating
Yeah.
emotional reactions and distractions. So
Totally.
I am probably going to be like devil's advocate in this episode where I'm like, hey,
There's two sides to everything.
that's true.
But before we dive into the actual notes of this episode, I really want to catch you up on what's been happening with us. So let's just give a little insider to where we're at and why we're doing this episode on a Saturday.
Let's roll.
Okay, so we have our 50K next week, Saturday. We will be running our first 50K called the Sasquatch Run in McCall, Idaho.
The Sasquatch Shuffle.
Is it called the Sasquatch Shuffle?
I guess so,
Okay,
right?
cool.
So I feel like they've set the expectations a little bit lower than normal
Okay.
by using the word shuffle, and I am so in. I'm so down with that.
That sounds like, so it sounds like we're shuffling around this state park, which is really beautiful, called Ponderosa State Park in McCall, Idaho. It's literally like, I don't know what they call it, like an inlet piece of land.
It's a peninsula.
Sorry, not inlet. Peninsula piece of land that it has lake views all the way around it, but you are in the Ponderosa trees. That's why it's called Ponderosa State Park. It's a tree. Ponderosa is a pine tree. Anyway, it's going to be absolutely gorgeous. It's totally different than what we normally run, which is out in desert world. And being up in the mountains and the trees is just going to be so surreal and so beautiful, especially with the lake surrounding us the entire time. So hopefully we catch some amazing views as we make loops on this 50K.
Like, we don't have to hope for that. We've been there before.
Yeah.
And the
We
whole
will.
loop, we're going to see water. We're going to see trees. We're going to see mountains. And I'm looking at the weather. We're not going to see snow.
That's great.
But we are going to see our breath because it's going to be right around 30 at the start of the race. I know it's still a week away, but these things tend to be pretty accurate.
Yeah.
So
That's okay. We are trained for that. You know, we trained earlier this year in February in the cold when we were training for our first Roby Creek half marathon race, and it was chilly. It was pretty chilly. In fact, I will post a couple of photos here if you are watching this on YouTube of us training in the cold and the snow here. So I know that we're ready. I know that we can do this.
So I wrote the theme song for the Sasquatch Shuffle.
Oh, yeah,
and
you did.
hopefully you'll drop a link to it
Okay.
somewhere in here. So someone that will listen to it But yeah, we started with the beautiful Roby Creek run in the cold. And we got distracted yesterday because our beautiful Roby Creek run trail burned to the ground.
So we woke up, okay, switching gears here. We woke up yesterday and we have a little window that's out our master bedroom bathroom, and it has a little crank on it, and I cranked open this window, and the sky was unusually strangely pink red, and Dave says, I think the sun's coming up. I'm like, it's like 5 a.m. and there's still stars. I don't think the sun's coming up. So we hightail it, jump in our car, and go drive to see what the heck is going on. What was it, Dave?
Well, we went up Highland Valley, which is right around the corner from us. And Highland Valley, if you look at the map in Boise, Idaho, it's East Boise, out Warm Springs, right by the river. And it's actually one of the trails that we run. But it became immediately apparent as we started driving that direction that there was
a wildfire,
a large wildfire that had popped up overnight.
Yeah.
And it looked serious, but it didn't look that serious.
Oh, it looked serious.
It did, but it didn't look massive, right? Like it looked pretty contained in that one valley.
It looked massive.
From my point of view.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
To me, it was massive. I could smell it. And it was like, whoa, okay. Literally, I think we were just stunned at the moment, just getting out of our car and grabbing some footage, which we'll show you here. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see some of the footage from this wildfire. So where the wildfire actually hit was all the training summer runs that we've been doing. A large portion of it has been in the foothills behind where we live. And there's this rolling, beautiful foothills that go all the way up to, what's Shaw Mountain's peak? 45? 6,000?
Somewhere around 6,000.
6,000 feet?
Yeah.
So the rolling foothills going up to 6,000 feet, which is, I think they called Lucky Peak Mountain, but we call it Shaw Mountain because it's part of Shaw Mountain Road and it goes to the top. Anyway, all of that was burned yesterday. All of our trails that we train on, all of those foothills that we've been training on, that fire came all the way down to the road of these houses behind our house. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And it was so impressive to me that the crews, we had helicopters and
tanker
aircrafters all day long running, everything from retardant to water to all day until maybe 7 o'clock last night. I mean, these guys were nonstop.
Right.
It was pretty intense.
And it just went from what we saw was about a 50 to under 100 acre fire, right? When we saw it. So it was big, but it wasn't massive. But by the time lunch showed up, it was at 5,000 acres and like the wind had whipped it into every direction.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like everything around us on one side was burning.
Well, that too, and a lot of the roads near us were evacuated, had evacuation notices, and it was really scary. It was really scary. So it distracted us from our entire Friday plan, and we'll have to talk about that. But how we kind of got wrapped up and absorbed in that. So anyway, that is what happened yesterday. Our training update is, and I'm just circling back, Dave, so we can get back to that. But our training update is we are still tapering for that big 50K that's coming up next Saturday, which we are heading up, leaving Wednesday. That's why we're doing the podcast today on a Saturday, which is very strange to get up and do a podcast on a Saturday morning. But here we are. We want to get this to you. No matter what, we want to get this to you. The other thing we wanted to share was last week, we only had one AI class. They gave us a break last week. And man, I'm telling you, we have gone deep now, folks, in AI. Friends, we are at the point where we are doing AI fine-tuning, I would say almost this schema Python kind of way. I mean, it has gone deep on GPT assistance is what we are fine-tuning. But wow. I mean, we are talking how to control the data, how to really fine tune the data of what you need to get the results that you really want to get consistently. That was the whole point. But wow, it was deep.
My head is still rolling
around.
I just, I'm more of a creative. I know I'm an analytical person. I've just never been a programming person.
And so it's hard for your mind to grab it.
Every time they talk about the next step of what you can do, my mind immediately becomes distracted and goes to what I could actually create as a product, right? And when I come back from that little journey, I'm like, whoa, what are we talking about?
Where are we?
Which I guess is a good thing.
Well, probably ties into this episode, but quick shout out to everyone who's messaged us about struggling with staying focused, because this episode is for you. I know a lot of you have shared your stories like, hey, I want to get this thing done, but I am struggling with staying focused. How do I move from A to B? The things that I wanted to do at the beginning of the year, it's now towards the end of the year, and they're still not done. So before we dive into this, just a couple of shout outs, because I wanted to keep this episode short. I'm going to just mention you all that have been out there. So I just pulled a couple of things up. I launched a post called New Season, New You, which I always love new seasons as they change. And Justin Jess _ said, one of my favorite times to run is fall, cooler weather. That crisp fall smell, leaves crunching under your feet. I love that. Definitely an awesome time to get in a new routine. Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Justin and Jess. Amna, the solopreneur copywriter, she's always with us. Cooler temperatures make it much easier to start running again, of course. And Elliot Murray says the seasons changed mirrors the runner's growth. What's your next trail? I like that. The seasons change mirrors the runner's growth. Yeah, that's awesome. That's pretty cool. One more. I launched a post called We Have a Rule. We'd rather have an uncomfortable conversation now than a fight later. Honestly, it's always easy. It isn't always easy, but it's always worth it.
I like that one.
Yeah.
So, and if you do anything in a relationship, right, if you do that one thing, have the uncomfortable conversations, you will end up in a much better place than burying it under the rug. I think you mentioned that in one of the last episodes.
Yes. And our whereabout says brutally honest communication really is the key to strong relationships. Hannah.iPower says sometimes uncomfortable conversations are necessary too. And Putzel Penalty says that is so true. So those were the couple of shout outs that I wanted to share today with everyone. And then, of course, acknowledging you, the listener, for tuning in. If you've been feeling overwhelmed or frustrated with where your time and energy is going, know that you're not alone. By listening today, you're already taking the first step to reclaim your time and refocus on you. So let's dive in, Dave, to this number one thing that's killing all of our progress.
All right. And I want to start.
And it did kill our progress yesterday, by the way.
It did. So I want to start with a hook, right? I want to start with a little bit of a distraction.
Okay.
I want to start with maybe having you feel an emotion.
Yeah.
And also a question.
Yeah.
I'll ask you directly, Wendy.
Okay. Let's go.
What if I could show you how to get 9 40-hour work weeks with no distractions, nothing, where you could focus only for those 9 weeks, 40 hours a week on the one thing that you need to accomplish? What do you think you could do?
Do I have to choose one?
You don't have to.
I think it would be incredible if you could focus on the one thing for 9 weeks. I'm thinking of everything from my training, the strength I could build, the time and energy I could put into visualizing what my next big thing is, growth that we're doing on our programs. So yeah, there'll be a lot.
Well, that's what you're going to get out of this episode, because if you just take back the average of 1 hour per day that people are distracted, and I'm not talking about television, those other things, I'm actually talking about distractions or negative emotions, which I consider to be a distraction, you actually earn back those 9 weeks, those 9 40-hour work weeks where you could focus solely on getting something done. And I think that's the difference between being productive and having a mediocre year. Yeah. And I know, like, we all go down that road, but you've got to be conscious about it. And that's what we're talking about today. Yeah. So sort of take that piece of information, tuck it in your back pocket. Do you have a pocket today? And think along those lines, because the highest performers, right, they allow the distractions to be pushed away and rescheduled for another time. And they do the work, right? And you're like, how did they get it all done? And it's because they're actually using the same time we all have. They're just focusing in a much more concrete way. So.
This is why we are doing the podcast on Saturday, because we looked at our overall full schedule for next week coming on Monday, and we said, what do we want the 2 days leading up to the day we leave for our trip to look like? do we really want to shoot this on Monday? Because it takes a lot of energy to put time and energy into it. It's not just about shooting a podcast. There's a lot that goes beyond that into, editing and preparing it to be published out there and so on. So this is why we looked at our full schedule and said, how could we attack and take our Monday, Tuesday and move part of it to a Saturday, Sunday? So that's what we're doing. But yes, here's the core lesson that we're talking about today. The number one thing that kills your progress in anything that you're doing in life is distraction. Distractions are incredibly sneaky. 1 minute you're working, the next you're scrolling through Instagram, you're checking your emails, responding to someone else's request, whether it's a text message, a phone call, what have you. And just the other day, I sat down and did some focused work. And before I knew it, I had spent 30 minutes responding to some contractor that was coming over to the house. And that was like, oh my gosh, that's 30 minutes that just went out the wayside. I think you have to be incredibly conscious when we're talking about distractions, because distractions are like the silent progress killers. And I know so many friends and family members that tell me, man, I really wish that I would have done XYZ. In fact, I was just talking to my sister who had said 4 or 5 things that she wished that she had done, that she was going to cram it in next week before she came up and crewed us next week for our 50K. And I felt really bad about it. And this is why we continue. I think it's almost like you are steering your own ship, like as an airplane goes, right? And it's constantly making tweaks. You have to constantly make tweaks. And giving yourself away to so much is really a huge deal. When we give ourselves away, we overcommit to everybody else's thing. You are already putting your things on the back burner. And it's really great to volunteer and all that and give your time. But when you don't have it, it's actually okay to do what you need to do. If it's the end of the year and your taxes aren't done, you need to prioritize that. Or if it's you wanted to prioritize that workout today and it didn't get done, you need to rethink and get that, whatever that thing in. Now, there's things that come up, like what happened yesterday to David and I. We had a wildfire near our house. We were on some evacuation alert, so there was some distraction. And also when those sort of life things happen, hurricanes,
I mean, you really have to
fires.
Yeah, you have to talk about what's a distraction and what's a reality, right?
Right. I mean, there are some things.
There are things when your phone goes off and it says you are now in a
evacuation.
Yeah, a ready evacuation mode.
Yeah.
You're like, well, maybe this isn't a distraction, but it was too. I think the thing that's interesting that you just said was you led off with distractions and immediately talked about family. And like we all have that family distraction thing. Today is Saturday, and there's an ALS walk, right? And we had to make a conscious choice because we lost a family member a year ago to ALS. And we did the walk last year. It's super important to us. However, with our time crunch, we needed to decide, right? Like, do we get the things that we say we were going to get done, or do we take off most of today and go walk for the cure? I know we donated some money. It may not be the same, but sometimes those decisions are hard, right? Like we're not saying, hey, it's just easy. Just don't do the thing.
Right.
But the reverse of that, it literally is that easy. Don't do the thing and you will have the power. And it's not always popular, right? Especially when it comes to family and emotional things like that.
The guilt sets in. And you feel responsible. And it kind of goes back to the distraction trap. It's the distraction trap. There is so many ways you can give your time and energy away to so many other things. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why are you giving yourself away to volunteer here and here and here and here when you don't have the time or you don't have that in your lifestyle? You know, like, forgive me, but my dad is just so distracted. Even in his late years in being retired, he is trying to sell his house. He's living in 2 different places. Bless his heart, he is a fantastic dad. He's a fantastic human being. He really is. But he is very distracted in trying to get what his goal is, which has been for the last 2 years to sell his house. And it still hasn't happened yet.
Because there's always one more thing. There's always one more project.
At the same time, he also runs the distraction trap, the guilt trap as well. He has volunteered his time to other people. Bless his heart. It's absolutely amazing, but he's given himself too much away. He just can't let it go. And I know other friends and family that is doing the same thing. And they're so frustrated when they come back to Dave and I and they share their story. And I just had it happen last night on a phone call. They said, I'm so bummed that it's still end of the year and I haven't done XYZ, but I'm going to try to jam it in next week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I was like, that just doesn't sound. To jam it in is not the way to do it. It's you need to block the time and schedule it. That is the big thing. That is the big thing.
And speaking of guilt, so people think you're selfish, right? How do you get
Right.
How do you get around this where people's view of you that you're selfish with your time, or you say no to too many things? Like, how do you get around that?
Okay, so here's the thing. A lot of people have told Dave and I, you guys spend so much time training. I have heard that so much. If you were to do less training, you could get ahead in life more. And I thought to myself, that's your goal, not mine. I think we do a pretty appropriate time training with what we can. As the season changes, we have to change our timing of when we're out there for training and depending on what's coming up in our block times. But you can't let others put their wish for you on you. You have to do it for yourself. And what you just said about how do you not feel guilty, to me, you just have to drop it and let it go.
Yeah. Empty the bucket. I agree. Because the guilt emotion, like every emotion, is an involuntary action, right? It just comes up. It's biological. There's nothing you can do about it. But once it bubbles up and comes into your consciousness, it becomes a reaction that's completely controllable, and it's completely on you to drive that reaction period. And, we all see people that are like reactionary over the thing that happened 6 years ago. They're still reacting to it. And I think that's key, right? Key to both the distraction and emotional management or mismanagement.
We had a mentor several years ago that talked about this, and I love this game that you can play. Totally a game you can play. So it's are you going to do A or are you going to do B? Let's call it that. We're going to do A or are you going to B? And here's how you walk yourself through it. On A, how do you feel about doing A and then completing A and coming back to foundation? Or is it B? How do you feel about doing B and completing that and coming back in foundation? Which one is the distraction and which one is going to actually meet your goals? Could you do both? Possibly. Absolutely. But where are you giving your time to come back and feel like check mark? That's done.
Agreed.
But when you can look at it from that lens and say, you know what, today, if I were to do the B thing, oh my gosh, I would feel so much better to be back and it's done and I did the thing and I'm like solid.
I was listening to a recent podcast between Alex Hermosi and Cody Sanchez.
Yeah.
And I love what they have going on this year. They sort of have a game where they text each other every time they say no to something that is significant, right? Not the minor things, but the major things. They're both leaders. If you don't know them, look them up in business and what they're doing. And when you're a leader like that, there's a ton of opportunity that just is pushed your way. But you can only be distracted by other opportunities so often, and neither of them are taking anything on, right? They're focused on their thing. And so they're like, hey, multi-million-dollar opportunity came my way. I said no. And they're like, thumbs up,
For sure. That kind of ties it. That's amazing. Because, they're having to, this ties into my next thing. Okay, hold on. I love that what you just said, because let me just wrap this for my thought here. The thing to do about distractions, the very easy thing we think about is creating boundaries, turning off, unnecessary notifications, setting aside specific times to block time to get your thing done, and thinking about you control your time, not your phone, not everyone else's. The other thing, though, is when you're talking about a lot of stuff coming in to high performers, it comes into all of us, and we all have to make those decisions. And there's an illusion of multitasking to take too many things on. And I think we've all been there. Like, we're thinking that we're productive, juggling, 15 tasks at the same time, we're on the phone, we're paying a bill at the same time. We're, checking our text real quick, popping up an Instagram story, popping on your laptop, getting whatever else done on the next tab. You're doing like 3 or 4 or 5 things. But in the reality, we're getting less done. I used to think that multitasking was a superpower, but it's actually a myth. I mean, studies now have shown that multitasking cuts efficiency because you're not focused. And multitasking raises stress levels because you've got too many things going off that's firing in your brain to get the one thing done right or the quality done right.
Right. You get many more things done at a low quality and a low value delivery than if you focus on the one thing.
Well, here's the thing. Let's say you are multitasking and boom, you just hit that text message. And all of a sudden, 5 minutes later, you're off the phone with whoever, let's say utility person, coming to fix your power or turn off the sprinklers or whatever it is. And you just realized, later in the day, man, I shouldn't have said that in my text message. I should have said it a different way. You see what I mean? The multitasking got you wrapped up and you immediately fired back whatever your reaction was. And that's not efficient. That wasn't quality. And what if that person actually took it not the way that you had expected, And they were like, whoa, I didn't see this coming,
The way people do. They take everything in the context and confines of their own story. So
yeah.
So you need to just be your highest and best self all the time. And I think multitasking disallows you to do that, right? When you're multitasking, you're just giving low quality feedback to so many different sources. And at the end of the day, you're stressed out, you're burnt out. You really didn't get that much done. And the people that you were, like if it's client work, right? You've delivered low value sort of work for them. So
here's a hack that I really love to do when I'm thinking about my to-do list is I use a program called monday.com. And I have my business tasks in one workboard, and I have my personal tasks in one workboard. And they have a status, and they also have a priority in order of how important it is. I will work through those every day, and I will set the priorities of what's next and what's my highest priority I have to get done and block the time. And no matter how much you don't want to do that thing, because it's going to take whatever, you still do it anyway. I ran into a problem yesterday. 3 things. I hit technical issues. I was going to check one of our social media platforms, and I had technical issues there on a program called Vista Social that pulls in a lot of our inbox. I was going to work on our email campaign, had technical issues over there. It was like one thing after another. So it didn't throw me off, though, because I still had that to-do list, and I had it prioritized. When you don't have something that's prioritized, it doesn't have to be a digital format, but I do think it's helpful to have a digital format since we are in the digital world, is having that digital format that you can look at, having some sort of format that you can look at and prioritize what is most important, so that when that person calls you and said, hey, Dave, do you want to come do this thing with me or go to dinner or go camping this weekend or whatever it is, you can say, let me check my schedule. And not just my schedule, but let me also check my priorities. And you say, you know what, I can't do it this weekend because I've got some block time, but next weekend it could be better for me.
And I love to blame stuff on the schedule.
Oh, I know.
So it's just an easy way to describe it to people. Not that it's a cop-out, but when you tell people that's not really a priority, they always take that wrong, right? They're like, what do you mean I'm not a priority, because they personalize it? And it's like, that's not what I said, but it doesn't matter. That's the way they feel. So putting it as I have something else blocked in my schedule during that time period, people will still push back and say, well, why didn't you reschedule it? This is more important. Everybody, especially family, throws the guilt trip your direction. And that's where you just need to stay strong. And you don't need to explain to yourself, right? You don't need to explain why you are who you are. Just the fact that whatever it is that they want to inject into your schedule doesn't work because you're already scheduled.
Here's the other thing about distraction. Distraction is actually overwhelm. When you are overwhelmed with something, the best thing that you do, when we all do it, is we distract ourselves to do something else. Dave loves shopping at the grocery store. So I'm telling you, if he can get out of a project, he will. If I say, hey, do you want to go to the grocery store? Oh my gosh, he's in. He's like, are you kidding me? Yeah, let's go right now.
Well, eating's a priority.
At the same time, how many times are you driving past that gym that you're not going to, that you thought you'd get that workout in, and you haven't done it? It's been like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you haven't even gone on. We just watched an incredible show. It was on the Doozer channel. Check him out on YouTube. I think it's Ryan Doozer. And he had a video called, I think it's 2024 Ragbri. And it's a huge road bike ride for 7 days in Iowa. I think it's you're moving across the entire state for like 7 days. Isn't that right?
Right. I think it's 7 days in a cornfield.
7 days in a cornfield. Anyway, there was a story on there that Doozer shared, which I absolutely think is incredible, about a gentleman who was, I want to say, 400 pounds. And he thought that he could start walking. Well, walking hurt his knees so bad he couldn't do it. He had a friend of his that said, "Have you tried biking?" And that was like out of the question, because if I can't walk, I can't bike. But he actually did try biking. Guess what? That guy rode this year Ragbri, and he has lost, I don't know what the time frame was, but he shared on the story of the interview that Doozer had with him, 200 some pounds. That to me is incredible. And he's more joyful. He's more expressive. He's very happy. He's living a life that he never thought was possible from however many years ago that he's been at that weight. To me, that means everything is possible. And you can start at any time. If you're 60, 70, 80, and you're frustrated about XYZ, do something small. And here's the thing about overwhelm. When you look at a project, let's say your taxes, it's overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. But when you break it up into small little chunks and you ask yourself, who can help me get this done? Just little chunks make a huge difference. It doesn't have to be, you have to complete the whole thing today. You know, like you're writing a book. I've got to get the whole thing done. No, you're working in micro chunks, right? You're going to work on part of this chapter today. You're going to work on part of this chapter today. Or you're writing this song. You're going to work on part of it, but you're going to set aside the time to be focused in each of those areas.
Love it. And you've mentioned taxes a few times in this episode. Am I supposed to review the taxes? I do want to say, you are an incredible high performer when it comes to scheduling. Not everybody is that way, and it doesn't work for everybody, but you need some sort of system to keep yourself accountable, right? So if you like the yellow pad, right? Like I'm old school, really old school. I love the yellow pad and priorities at top. I love my digital calendar. But at the end of the day, you need to, and this can be different for different people, you need to have scheduled time that is unscheduled. Because and studies have shown this, right? Like you can only focus for so long and be productive before the curve of actually generating energy, just drops off. And that's somewhere around 4 hours. So that sort of naturally fits into like the lunch break and those sorts of things. But there's nothing wrong with scrolling social media. Just put it in your unscheduled time, right? Or if you have to, then schedule some time for scrolling social media for 15 minutes, whatever it is, because you might need that release valve. I need some sort of transitional moments in my life from one thing to the next. And I can tell you my worst days are when I schedule my meetings back to back, which I try to do because I only want to do 1 or 2 days a week of meetings ever, right? I want the other days to do the things that I need to do. I'm super sapped. I'm super drained when it's just back to back to back to back to back all day long. So schedule in a little bit of time. It's different, again, for everybody. You're like a superhero when it comes to this. So, men and women are different too in that respect. We have the monkey brain here. It's like easy to get distracted. In fact, I'm getting distracted right now just thinking about it.
We did a donation drop-off the other day, and if you remember, the guy who was helping us shared that he was a vet, that he was a recovering drug addict, and that he was learning to watch women for multitasking skills. He was literally had a headset on and was taking a call while he was helping us take our donations. It was awesome. It was so awesome. But here's the thing, as we're talking about stop multitasking, I think it's important to focus on one thing at a time, and you'll see results faster with less burnout. Think of it as a long haul, right? For life overall. I mean, try setting a timer and say, I'm going to try to get this one thing done in the next 30 minutes or 1 hour. Dave was with yesterday's fire whole thing. I said, we have 1 hour before dinner. What can you get done in 1 hour? Let's go. Let's go. Let's get back on it. Dave's like, the whole day is wasted. I'm like, no, it's not. Let's just get in there, get 1 hour of work accomplished. And you did. And you'll be amazed how much you can accomplish in the 1 hour. That's totally focused. No phones, no notifications, no dings. You're not taking anybody's text message. It's time to put it down and focus on your thing.
Well, I'm going to say yesterday was a little bit of a distraction and a little bit of a necessity, right? It was so funny. As the fire progressed, at lunchtime, we decided we would eat in our garage. We opened the garage door. We set up the workout bench as our table and then 2 other like stands that we could sit on. And we did that looking out the garage because when we woke up in the morning, the fire was way away in the distance. We had to drive to it. At lunchtime, it was burning on the other side of the road, just on the other side of a building, and it looked fierce, right? And we were eating lunch and debating, is our time up, right? Do we need to like really pivot and start shoving stuff in the car? So I hopped on my bike after lunch and rode up there. I'm like, no, it looks like they're going to knock this down. It's not going to get into the structures around us. But is it a distraction? Sometimes it's a necessity.
It was, yes. Now, I'm going to circle back, Dave, because you distracted me in this conversation.
Oh, nice. See, I'm really good at that. If you need distraction, reach out to me, and
Dave will help you with those
10
distractions.
ways that I can guarantee you will automatically be sidetracked for the rest of the day. If you have a week, the rest of the week, look, if you want to burn a month, I got a few good ideas for you.
And now you know, friends, who is actually publishing this podcast. Just want to say.
Oh, wait, no, everything on all the chips belongs to me, so nothing happens till I offload the chip.
So I do want to talk about something that's really big that we are all struggling with, and that is the digital detox. It is one of our biggest distractions, and I think when you do not have boundaries set up for yourself and you don't disconnect yourself from your phone, you don't realize how much mental space you're giving away to everything that is popping up on your phone and the dopamine hits that your brain is consuming by what you're consuming in your head. And it's constant, right? Because you want that hit, yet you don't even realize it, but your brain's happy with it. Like first thing you wake up, oh my God, I have to check the news. You know, oh my gosh, I have to check who texted me last night. You know, it's like we need to set boundaries for mental health on that digital detox. That's so important because that is a huge distraction in our life that we have to post this or we have to check that or we have to do this thing on our digital. You know, think about your mental health when we didn't have those phones to get yourself back on track, to help yourself be present for right now today or for the love of your life, the family that you have around you, the work relationships that you are around. To start feeling good about getting your goals met. Sometimes we can put ourselves in the space where we say, we're so busy, we can't get this XYZ thing done. At the end of the day, are you so busy that you can't really take care of your own health that matters to you in the longevity of your life? I have saw my mom do a knee surgery, which was over a year ago, and her knee surgery didn't go well. It has taken her 1.5 years to schedule an additional appointment to go have her knee checked. The knee surgery was supposed to, get you back on your feet so you can move better. And hers didn't go well. And she had something happen, and it's taken her 1.5 years to make that appointment because I've been nagging her. Mom, get in there and get that appointment made, you know? But at the same time, you know how many things have distracted her from that? Life, trips, she's avoiding it. I know she's avoiding it. She doesn't want to go back to the doctor and get the real news of what it may be. We don't know. Could be a small surgery, could be an adjustment. We don't know. But also, she's hot on her digital phone. Yeah. I tell you what, my mom knows games on her phone. I feel like my mom could have a YouTube channel on just phones alone. No, it doesn't matter if you have Android or Apple phones. I mean, she's both. She does them all. She switches all year long.
Yeah, every 3 months there's a new phone.
She's got a new phone
to set up. And then there's a long setup period, learning period, then nothing doesn't work. And I got to migrate all my contacts. And no, I got to just put them all back in. I spend the whole weekend putting contacts in.
She should have a YouTube channel, honestly. But really, moving back to the digital detox, you don't have to completely go off grid, but it's by creating small little digital detox windows, that's what's important. And Dave and I are very conscious about that. You know, sometimes we allow ourselves to be create, because we are creators. We're content creators. At the same time, there's a time to shut it off. At the end of the evening when you're trying to chill or you're sitting down at the table, it's so annoying to have someone sitting that's eating with you and you're trying to be present, but yet you're not because you're, off to the side on your phone. You've got to remember to unplug. No phone, no social media, no distractions. This is when you feel more in control of your time and it refreshes your mind.
And the average American, I'll just say American here, spends an average of about 3 hours per day in digital land, right? For non-work. And that includes TV and the phone. And often those things are multitasking at the same time. And people say, I think it's amazing you guys find the time to work out. And I'm like, well, you're spending over 20 hours a week, right? More than I spend running. Just sitting on your phone and your TV, eating probably Doritos, which I love. That's why we don't buy them. And it goes back to, how you want to feel about yourself when you're by yourself and who you want to become, what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. Like, that's just Distractionville, but it's also time that you could be putting toward doing something else. The thing that you keep saying, I wish I had this in my life. I wish I was this, I wish I could play guitar, or I could lose weight, or volunteer at the church, all of those things, whatever it is that lights your fire. You have the time. You're just not managing your time correctly.
Right. Absolutely. If you want the goal bad enough, then make it happen and do it consistently. Make it happen, do it consistently. Dave and I wouldn't say got made fun of, but we went to a gala last week. We went to a gala and we sat down at this table with strangers who asked us, said, what do you do? And I love that question because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I were to open up my mouth to say to these people what I do, it's not one thing. It's like when people meet Dave and I, they say, hey, so what do you guys do? And it's like, oh yeah, we just do the one thing. We don't do the one thing. We don't do the one thing. So we're rattling off everything that we do. And they were like, oh, is that all? And I was like, that's not quite the answer I was looking for. I think they were kind of blown away.
And that's why people that I'll never see again, I always say, we just have a marketing company. We just do marketing. And they're like, oh, I understand that. Okay.
And we run some races. That's it.
You have a job and then you're like, got a hobby doing a little bit of running. I'm like, exactly.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
But then you're like, well, we do podcasts. We're learning AI. We own or are involved in 2 digital marketing agencies. We're releasing an advertising product called Short Star Video. We have this couples coaching called Speak to Connect. And we also are planning to do, ultra marathons next year and go do TMB. Like all these things. They're like,
what? What's going on?
You can't do that. I'm like, yeah, you actually can.
You can. Yeah, it's all about how you manage your time. But
and I do want to say how many TVs do we have in the house?
We have 2,
okay.
I
guess.
I guess we have 2 TVs.
I know there's one that I don't even know where the remote control is.
Never turned it on.
I turned it on during COVID because I was trapped in bed dying. But we don't have cable, right? Like, and people think that's bizarre. They're like, what about the football game? And I'm like,
Dave,
what football game?
Dave, does anybody have cable these days? Are we all not consuming off our apps?
No, most people have cable.
People have cable?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't
sure. It's still happening.
Okay. I thought we were all on App World.
Like we're done with the yellow pages, but we do have cable. It's got to come in some way. Some people are just doing Wi-Fi, I guess, but it's still cable coming into your house.
Listen, I was reading the insider secrets of a playbook that got dropped in my private inbox from the Mr. Beast team. And he was talking about what he consumes for media, by the way. And it was like 100% YouTube. He's like, ditch cable, ditch TV, only watch YouTube. There's almost everything in every genre that you can find on YouTube. It's pretty impressive. So anyway, moving back, I know we need to, bring this down, but I do want to share the takeaways from this episode.
Okay, land the plane. Let's land the plane here.
I want to share the takeaways from this episode. One of the things that we didn't mention, Dave, before I share the takeaways, is you can also have an a struggle with, I was trying to find the right words to say, you can also have a struggle with a biochemistry issue that could be causing a little more severe ADD or ADHD. And that is something that is not to be messed with, to go to a psychiatrist and start tossing drugs at yourself. We always recommend, if you can, check out Amen clinics and do what they call a SPECT scan to get a picture of your brain that can dial in a possibility of one of the 7 types of ADD or ADHD issues.
And aren't you an advanced brain health coach with Amen Clinics?
I am.
When the hell did you find time to do that?
When did I do that? I'm just saying, we didn't mention that. And one of the things that can be very frustrating is that you're trying to set aside the time to do something, and you just can't get it done. So there could be a chemistry issue that you can get help with. And it can be as simple as a supplement. I have some distractibility in my brain after having a SPECT scan, and I learned that there was just some supplements that is what I needed to take, and it does make a big difference. I love Amen Clinics because they have a motto of do no harm to patient first. And that is probably the biggest draw for me at Amen Clinics. I love that. I think there's 7, maybe 8 locations now across the United States. So check them out if that is something that kind of hits you the right way, that you or your children or your teens or someone you know in your family or friend group may need to get some help with. And it's really good to have a picture. And when you get a picture of your brain, by the way, you're not throwing darts anymore at psychiatric drugs to manage, like Ritalin. Do you really need Ritalin? Maybe not. You may just need lion's mane, which is a supplement. You don't know until you actually get a picture. And I think it's more valuable. If you think about the money that you're going to pay on Ritalin and your psychiatrist is going to prescribe that, go pay for a SPECT scan and get a reading of what you really need. To get a picture of your brain is more than everything. It's just like a broken bone. How do you know if your bone's broken? Until you get a picture of it. And how are you going to treat it? So it's just something that we didn't mention, Dave, is to cover there can be a bigger issue here. And more than likely, and I didn't even pull the stats on this, we all have a form of ADD and ADHD. So what can help you manage it?
And I understand that there's people that have biochemical, drivers in them that are
in imbalance.
Advanced.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a lot of this is like a self-fulfilling prophecy too, because it's your habits, right? If you don't try and work on those distractions and you let them take you in another direction and you're fighting that, it actually creates this neural loop where the distraction becomes easier to have, right? Because it's this energetic fight in your brain against what should I do versus what I am doing. And like anything, you can become more easily distracted the more you become distracted, because your brain has to work less by putting those neural networks and hardwiring. That's really what's going on in your brain. So someone that's been heavily distracted for years has this, what appears to be advanced, condition of distractibility, when in fact it's become a learned trait that you can unwire, right? And it just takes working on unwiring it. Usually in 30 to 45 days, you can create a new habit. You can create a completely new you in how you think, what you do, and how you spend your time. And I think that is not something that is talked about enough, right? Because you've got to go through the hard work. It's like breaking any bad habit. I won't mention, we all know what they are, but you can unwire those things in 30 to 45 days and see incredible results. It just takes willing to be uncomfortable for a short amount of time. I use my running this year, right? Started running this year. I know we're talking ultrathons, those sorts of things, but the fact of the matter is, within 60 days, I had rewired my mind and body to go from I hate running and I can't run and my knees are going to hurt and all of these things to feeling pretty good about it. And I'll just say, the other morning I was doing a medium run. It was dark, only 5 miles along the river, with a giant, like the shit-eating grin on my face. And I recognized, I'm like, how did this become my happy place, right? And it's not because it's great. It's because I've wired myself to be able to do it both physically, emotionally, and mentally. And anybody can do that in any area of their life. And I think that's, talking about distraction, you can conquer, you can tame the distractions. They're always going to come up, but you can gain so much more by working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Distractions are also fun. They can also be fun. And when you said, I'm not going to name them, I'm thinking in my head, you're talking about distractions, not even your phone, but habits, not great habits. Could be alcohol, could be sugar, could be sex, could be whatever it is.
Oh, please let it be sex.
Could be any of those. But the things that's stealing your time and energy without you realizing it, that is the silent killer. When you come back to that your goals aren't done, the priorities that you want, man, we only get one life. Do the best. We are here to serve others in this lifetime. That's your children, that's your family, that's whatever you've got going on, your adventures. Man, serve. That is the biggest goal here. If I can move ourselves through space of time in this world, do the things that lights your heart on fire and fuel the inner flame, because that's what Embers Rising is about. But distractions are the silent killers. Set boundaries, turn off the notifications, create dedicated time to focus on the things you want to get done. Stop multitasking. Focus one thing at a time for better results for yourself. Get that digital detox done. Give yourself those intentional breaks, especially when you're around your loved ones, your family, your friends. Be present and be intentional. Notice when distractions are creeping in. Be conscious about it, right? Like we were conscious about it yesterday, and build habits to block that, stop that, regroup, recreate the time and energy, especially when, let's say, something gets canceled. Oh my gosh, I have 2 extra hours. Okay, what can you do in the 2 extra hours? Could you actually go to the gym? Could you do that thing? Could you get that one thing off your list? Could you spend 30 minutes on the thing that you were planning?
Or why not spend 2 hours just being ticked off about the fact that something was canceled? Because
nothing you can do about it.
Happens all the time. So I get this feeling that the flaps are down, the gear is down.
Yes.
The plane is about to hit the runway. But I do want to just say one thing about hijacking focus, and that is negative emotions. I know I started with that, but negative emotions are distractions, right? And I say that because the emotion is involuntary, but the reaction is completely your choice. How do you react to whatever's going on? And I get it. It comes up all the time. Frustration is one of those things that just comes up all the time in our business. And however long you prolong that period is your choice to waste that time. So that's the last thing I want to say.
That's all good.
To sidetrack, I don't want to distract you from where we were going.
David's nailing it in. So, listen, let us know what distractions that you're struggling with. Leave us a DM or a comment somewhere and let us know. We understand about how to overcome procrastination and how to stay motivated. We want to encourage you, though, to give us your thoughts and ideas of your struggles. Share with us. That's what we're here as a community to do. It's really all about the togetherness of us as a community who are all listening to Embers Rising right now or watching Embers Rising, however you're consuming this, to be together and to help each other move through the next thing. So if you're struggling with something, man, let us know. Maybe there's something we can do to help. We've been talking about building a group together. And I'm just spilling the beans here a little bit, but we're talking about putting a Facebook group together. And then we're talking about, David and I are talking about doing an Instagram live group where we can have a chat over Zoom and you guys can meet us and we want to meet you. And that would be amazing to hear more about your lives and what you're struggling with. Maybe we can't help answer everything, but maybe somebody in the group can. And that would be amazing. So stay tuned for that as we're working on that.
And I'm against the Facebook group because Facebook offers so many distractions.
I know.
How many times did you go to Facebook
that.
to look at a group and then you end up seeing what Aunt Mabel's doing? She's got another new car.
So one more thing I just want to say is thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found this episode helpful. Don't forget to rate us on Spotify. We are a new podcast. We would love it if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcast, or if you're watching this on YouTube, leave us a comment. Make sure you hit the subscribe button on YouTube because so many people forget to hit that little tiny bell that we all forget to when we watch something that inspires us, so you can be notified of a new episode release. Follow me on Instagram, MS Wendy Jae, for more tips on staying focused and overcoming life's big challenges or little challenges. Anything else, Dave?
Nope.
All right.
I had the urge to be distracted, but I'm just going to say no.
He's going to say no. So
Serenity now.
until next time, we want to say, protect your focus, stay intentional, and let's continue to choose to keep going. And most important, to crush your goals. And at the end of every podcast, Dave and I always like to say, Aloha.
Aloha.